making space for women's voices, which are usually marginalized unfortunately, in Muslim communities. And I told Kabir Helminski that I was going to mention him in my opening little dialogue, is that what has been very refreshing is that some of the speakers like him, and there have been one or two other speakers whose name I'm forgetting right now. Imam Faisal has also spoke, and you know, about this need for Muslims, men. I can see a few in the audience, and I'm sure they're very, very kind and wonderful men with us. But we, in a larger context, yes, Muslim men really need to introspect and see how they are treating their women, and we need to honor them, give them dignity, give them inclusion in legislature, in family laws, need to be reworked. And very disturbing laws and fatwas have been coming out, which are dealing with women, where women have absolutely no, are denied, the authority to be part of those fatwas. So that really becoming a very serious issue with Muslims. I'd just like to set the tone for this, what I'm sure is going to be a enlightening, lovely dialogue and conversations, because I have these friends around me and I'm surrounded by light. I mean, there's Sumbul from Lahore, who works with spiritual traditions and reclaiming them with Hastonis. There's Afra Jalabi and Nima and Ruqayya, and all these women inspire me in so many different ways, And so I just feel very honored to really be on the same platform with them today. And we welcome you all to India. A big hand for my foreign delegate friends. I'd also like to say something which I think is one of the most beautiful things written by Karen Armstrong, who wrote that it would not be wrong to say that Islam was born in the arms of a woman. And yes, I'm going to clap to Karen Armstrong. And we all know that when the Quran was revealed and the Prophet was in self-doubt, it was Hazrat Khadija who came to his rescue, to his support, to his care. And she is one of the main financiers of Islam. She carried the light of the new faith. And men, and we have our friends, or our, especially where some Deoband and other outfits that actually issue fatwas that are completely shower of fatwas, which says, some of them are ridiculously say that women should not be allowed to work. And this, I feel they have no understanding of Islamic traditions. I mean, Hazrat Khadija exemplifies exemplifies piety. She exemplifies the perfect woman, and not just for Muslim women. I mean, she led a life of dignity, of honor. She was the caretaker of the Prophet and of so much that the Prophet was about. And she nurtured his children, his progeny. And the only children that survived of the Prophet were those from Hazrat Khadija. And I meet Muslim men today, who say that they really want a son because aage nasl kaise chalegi. They see the necessity of having a male child as ensuring the lineage of the family, which in the Islamic tradition is completely nonsense. Because the lineage of the Prophet comes to us from Hazrat Bibi Fatima, and that is and jo aajkal jo Sufi Hazrat hain, most Sufis, not all, but especially some of the most famous ones around the world actually come from the Prophet's lineage. They are either Hassan or Hussaini, and sometimes both, like in Khaja Gharib Nawaz, Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia, Khaja Qutb Bakhtiar Kaki. तो हुजूर की नस्ल तो बीबी फातिमा से चली है. So Muslims should not really, pine for this son and want to have a male heir to, because that is not the tradition, and that has not been the sunnah. Of course, we also, we know that Sufism is about purification of the nafs, and has no place for extreme behavior. The Prophet said, beware of extremism because it destroyed the communities before you. He also said, moderation, moderation, moderation. Only with moderation will you succeed. So we definitely need to condemn all kind of extreme radical behavior. And I'd like to also say that there are many ways, because Sufism does represent the vibrancy of Islam. You can, there is unity of faith, but there is diversity of that sacred expression of how we express. The namaz is in Arabic, but we say prayers. We can say prayer in Arabic, in English, in Punjabi, in Saraiki, in anything. So yes, there are many ways of being Muslim. And I'd like to say there are very many ways of being Indian. So there are, yeah, why don't you clap for that? So extremism is not limited to Islam. We see Buddhism, which is supposed to be, is a great tradition, but we see what's happening to the Muslims in Burma and Myanmar. I mean, the Rohingya Muslims. We see what is happening to minorities in America, be they black, be they African or Muslim. We see a lot of radicalism which is not coming from any religious tradition, because all religious traditions contain universal truth in them. So, but the behavior, we see extremists, and we have to condemn it, whether they come from any religion, any group, anywhere in the world. We have to condemn all forms of extreme radical behavior. I also want to say that a very interesting point that, in Islam, God has no gender. And it's actually sinful to even try and create an image of the Almighty. Because Islam, we can only understand God as pure light, pure goodness, pure mercy. In fact, the Quran abrogated the concept of God as Father. Again, it does not blame Eve for falling or for tempting Adam, or for falling in, leading Adam into sin. There is no concept of the original sin. Adam represents the, in him we see the Adamic model for creation, like all of us. So it's not women who lead men into sin. It is the devil, it is the shaitan who leads us into sin, into error. And it's important to remember that prophets don't sin. They fall into error. And they turn back to God. And God forgives us. So that is the model that we need to follow. We have to turn back towards God, because He's all forgiving, all merciful. Also, the Prophet very often likened God to a mother's mercy who is all forgiving. Very, very often he did that. Will your mother throw you into the fire? How can God do that? So, the Sufi philosophy divides itself into the Jamal and the Jalal, the attributes of God known as Asma al-Husna. So the Sufi philosophy does believe that the attributes that are Jalal, majesty, splendor, wrath, are attributed to God, to the masculine, and the Jamal and the Halim and the Rahma are attributed to women. So God clearly has no gender. Another thing is that, God is, principal names are Rahman and Rahim. And Rahman and Rahim both come from the root word Raham, which is womb. So I always say that God endowed women with his primary attribute, that is Rahm. And that is why women are naturally compassionating, they're naturally merciful, they're naturally forgiving. And that is why the world needs the Muslim world particularly, and all of us globally, even in non-Muslim communities, need women leaders, because I think they can be, they really can contribute to world peace. I think I'll say some things. Oh, thank you. And okay, and even in Islamic history, we actually, we know that all religious traditions were kind of hijacked by male interpretations. And if we look at early women, there have been so many scholars, muftis, theologians, Sufis, teachers, that they were there before. Today we see less and less of them. I mean, Sulami in the 10th century actually wrote about 80 Sufi women. He wrote biographies of 80 Sufi women. This was Sulami, an Iranian professor. And Shaykh al-Akbar ibn al-Arabi, I'm sometimes very scared to talk about all these great scholars, of these great Sufi masters with scholars like Afra and Kabir in front of me. But Shaykh al-Akbar ibn al-Arabi, acknowledged a woman as his teacher. So did the known Misri. He called a certain Fatima from Egypt or Persia, I'm not forgetting. But he too, a lot of them had women teachers. And do you know that 1/4 of Islam, all hadith, comes from women transmitters? And that forms a huge corpus of Muslim faith. And I'd also, while I'm talking about this hadith, I'd also like to talk about the witnessing. You know, when they say about the witnessing that 2 women are equal to 1, which is actually not true, because this was, if you see it in its proper context, it was as not when testifying, but when witnessing, because so that one woman is not pressured, and 2 of them could witness something and could testify against somebody. But for testifying, there was never any need for to testify for hadith or to testify for the sighting of the moon. So that a lot of the narratives have actually absolutely changed over the years, and we are becoming more and more narrow in our interpretations. There's also been a very problematic theological verse in the Quran, which has been very problematic, to understand, which is about the beating of women, which is allowed in the Quran. And many friends ask me, what do you say about that? And now, thankfully, Al-Azhar and the official interpretations have used, because even Islamic narratives have had, by and large, male interpreters. So now it has been officially changed. The word daraba, which was the problematic word, has actually been changed from beating to go away. Because as Nima would know, in Arabian, in the grammar of the Arabian language is such that it lends itself to multiple meanings. And now that has been officially accepted. And in new translations of the Quran, you don't get that it is okay to beat your wife, you just go away. Because when Bibi Aisha was asked how to define the Prophet's character, and she said that his character wasn't completely in line with the Quran. And the Prophet never beat his wife. When he had discord with them, he just went away. So if there was a Quranic command to beat your wife, why wasn't the Prophet doing it? Because he didn't go against the Quran. So thankfully, we have some narratives that are now there. Oh, I'm so happy to see my dear friend from Afghanistan, Professor Raheen, who I have a great deal of respect. We were together at a Sufi conference. Welcome, and I'm so happy you are here too with us today. Yeah. And I just would like to also just say a small story, because I love to talk. I will maybe, even the concept of Maryam, Maryam in the Quran, we have a whole chapter, Surah Maryam. And she is always known as, Jesus is always known as Isa ibn Maryam. Nowhere in the Quran, nowhere did the Prophet ever address him except for my brother, Ya Akhi, Isa ibn Maryam. And unlike the Christian tradition, which I'm not very clear about, but in the Muslim tradition, Mary is the Ayatullah. She is the sign of God because she was chosen for the birth of Ruhallah, which we also believe is the spirit of God. I'll probably talk in between.